Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Godot Jam 3. I'm Adrian, your host, and in this live interview, we have a special guest, and we are going to discuss with Wojtek from Pineappleworks about porting Godot games to Switch. And one of the problems that many developers that either move from Unity to Godot or are considering Godot is if I can port my game to Switch or to another console, or what's the process, because it's not one button click. But I hope in this live stream, we'll figure it out together. By the way, I see a lot of people, and this is awesome. Hi, Rubens. Hi, Johnson, Michael, Daniel, Fox Cheese, MK. Nice to see you all here. I hope you can hear me as well, but I checked the microphone, so it should be fine. But yeah, what are we waiting for? Let's dive right in and meet Wojtek. So I'm gonna give the word to you. So can you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Hi guys, Wojtek here. I'm founder and CEO of Pineappleworks, and we're an independent publisher of independent games. I stress this double independent because we don't have any investors or venture capital or such or owned by another company. No, it's just a private company owned by me and Bart, who is a lead developer here at Pineappleworks as well. And I'm in charge of supervising all of our development, publishing, handling finances, business development, human resources, whatever, cleaning up. Yeah, so that's my role, I guess.
Okay, yeah, it
And
seems a lot.
yeah, and at Pineapple Works, we're basically doing games publishing, but also we do game development services as a provider. So aside from console porting or porting to, I don't know, different PC systems like Mac, Linux, Windows, occasionally when a developer has a Linux developed game, yeah. We also have polishing games in terms of making them run better, fixing problems which the developers of the game have trouble to fix. We do also quality assurance as a service. Yeah, so those kind of services.
So you offer a lot of services with your company, and if I'm not mistaken, you offer them for more engines. Am I right?
Yeah, we're not just Godot engine oriented, although it has a special place in our hearts, obviously.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work with Unity, Unreal, Game Maker, also with custom engines developed by the game developers themselves. So yeah, so basically very jack of all trades style, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, what's probably the most interesting thing for the people that have joined us in this session is the porting to Godot, and other game engines like Unity or Unreal just say, "Oh yeah, we can port to so many consoles and things," and when you check Godot, oh, you actually have to contact the company, or it's it feels probably for people it feels either restrictive or not accessible at all, in terms of porting a game. Is that so, or what is your take on this?
Yeah, well, it is a bit more restrictive, but this is like the business side of things, I guess. Because with Unity and Unreal, those companies, those are like commercial engines, they fund and maintain all the porting work on their engines. And the Godot engine, with its open source nature and also like open ownership, because it's like under the Software Conservancy Foundation. It's hard for the Godot engine, let's say, organization reach out to all the console platforms and provide, let's say, official ports because they can't act in such a way they can sign the necessary documents. So, from an organizational standpoint, that's a problem. So that's why third-party company support is essential with Godot engine. And that's like the main reason for the difference. Yeah. So it's kind of the cost of Godot's license, organization setup, and openness. At the same time, there are some open engines which have like some official support one way or another device, but it's typically the devil lies in the details, and it's usually like not public. So the code may be hidden from the public. It's shared with people who have access to the platform, but then you discover that you still have to do a lot of work yourself to do this, to do the successful port, or it's somehow hidden in the way that you have to pay some fees to get access, and it's not open. Maybe the code is closed somehow on some layer, so you don't have like fully open access to it, even though you have access to the platform and SDKs and such. So yeah, it's a bit convoluted in this way with different engines.
I see. Yeah, yeah, and I think it was a similar problem with the NVIDIA drivers for Linux, and
Yeah.
yeah, like you could like not embed them directly in the operating system, and you had to put them separately, and it was a pain for everyone. But now
Exactly.
NVIDIA
Yeah.
opened their drivers finally, finally. So would be nice to see for consoles as well, for them to maybe not be so restrictive. But until then, probably the most easiest way to port Godot games is to use one of these companies' services, and Wojtek's company is one of them.
Yeah.
So, of course, there are a lot of questions, and I'm gonna take them one by one. And what consoles do you support from Godot?
Like in general, we support all current generation platforms, but for Godot, we're able to support Nintendo Switch. That's what we started from. And we also support natively Xbox systems, which is like Xbox One and the newer Xbox Series S and X. And we're working on PlayStation 4 and 5, but that's still a work in progress.
Okay, so but the Switch is finalized and working properly, and Xbox is also fine.
Yeah,
And
everything fine. Like if someone approaches us like wanting to port or publish another game on those systems, then it's fine for us. It should be a Godot free based game. That's what we're like basing on the Godot free current stable. Yeah, and but if it's a Godot 2 game for some reason, then yeah, then we can still do it, I guess.
what if it's a God of War alpha game?
No, that will be a problem. Like for us, we're obviously monitoring Godot 4's development process, but we haven't looked into Godot 4 too much. We're just waiting for let's say, the first release candidates, the stable release,
Stable.
and fully commit to supporting Godot 4, and then for some time, I guess we'll be maintaining Godot 3 and Godot 4 for all of the platforms that we are going to support.
Yeah, yeah. I guess everyone is expecting God of War. I'm
Yeah,
also not switching until it's like not stable. I mean, I seen a lot of people switching, and it's amazing. They do already a lot of awesome stuff. But
yeah,
in production, when you actually have a product that you need to deliver, and this is really important because usually games submitted to these consoles go through a review process. And yeah, I want to discuss about the prerequisites of porting a game, because it's not just straightforward. There's not one button click. You do need dev kits, you do need dev accounts, and much more. So, what are the prerequisites for one?
yeah. Generally, the main prerequisite is to have access to the platform. Most, like all of the platforms, actually, I'm talking Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, ask you to fill out a form, tell a bit about your studio, about your upcoming game or the games that you've already done, and then they review your access, let's say. and it's not like everybody gets access. It's possible to get declined, and you have to try again after some time. It's not just for developers who are still making their first game. Like I've heard stories about developers who have had released a couple of games in PC and they still got rejected, let's say by Nintendo or Microsoft for some reason. So it's a process, let's say. But then when you get the access, then you can order a dev kit. You can have the hardware which you need to develop on. And then you also get access to all the technical bits, to documentation, to some, let's say, support forums. That's the prerequisite on the general level.
Okay.
Speaking directly with Godot, it's like, you need to integrate your code, or your engine code with the platform code, basically. And that's the hard part, I'd say, to start actually with Godot engine. Like everybody can do it because Godot's open licensing and open source nature like enables it. When you have access to the technical bits and pieces, the SDKs, whatever, from console platforms. But it's the hard part is to glue it all together and make it work.
Okay. And I wanted to say for people that don't know what a dev kit is basically another console that's running in parallel with the main console that you can get from stores. And this one, it can be used for developers to debug the game, to actually test if it's working or not. So probably I think it has also higher specs than the usual one, than the regular one.
Exactly, but the higher specs are usually like more RAM, more hardware space, things like that. It can't be like a beefed up version of the CPU or whatever, because like it has to somehow compare to the retail devices. Yes.
Yeah.
But basically, depending on the device, on the family of devices, the dev kits are usually beefier versions of the retail consoles, but they enable you to develop actually on them. Like Xbox had a program, I think they still have, that for a fee you can unlock your retail Xbox and you can develop on it somehow. It kind of works. It's a bit limited, but it's possible. It's, I think, even possible with UWP technology, which also works, or worked at least from what I remember, with Godot engine. It's one of the, let's say, platforms supported by Godot engine, so you can think around a bit with it and test your game, your Godot engine game, on a retail Xbox One or the newer ones, Series S and X. But that's the only, let's say, exception from the rule here. And I can say that some of the console platforms also differentiate like with two different kinds of dev kits. Like one is a developer kit, but there's also test kits, which are basically just retail consoles, but with a different software, let's say, so that you can test your games on them. And that's what's expected basically from the platform holders, that you have to test your games on the hardware that's closest to the retail hardware.
Basically, a test kit might be like an iPhone where you can sideload apps or something
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Yeah, good comparison. Yeah.
Because iPhone is like super restricted, and you would need like an iPhone dev kit. Of course, you can get like a developer account and things like this. But for a regular console, you cannot just push your game to your regular retail console and think that it will work, because it probably won't.
Yeah. No.
Only from the stores or from the official CDs or SD cards or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very very interesting. And I want to ask you, because I also think that people see in engines like Unity, like, okay, you have the option to port the game. If I download Unity and make a game, is just porting one click away, or in general, like for porting in any game engine, is it a more complex process than just hitting export and basically building it up for a different platform?
Yeah, it's very rarely the case that it works like that. Like technically, it's possible for such a situation if you have a, let's say, code sample or a simple tutorial of a 2D platformer game, and yeah, and then it would maybe work. But typically, games, especially like commercial releases of games, are a bit more complex than that. Use different plugins, different shaders for effects, different stuff. Well, depending on the engine, of course, like different dependencies of your game on the software layer, let's say. And it's rarely the case that it works as an easy process. It's the problem is that it's because of the closed nature of console development, console game development, is that there's no like open forum to ask questions about this. You need to rely on other developers, on the, let's say, closed console platform support forums to help you out, or ask like it's not that much knowledge shared and laying around just to see stuff. Not that many tutorials. Mostly the most what you can expect is the official documentation, and it's kind of like Godot engine's official documentation, and that's actually a compliment. Is that in that it's very comprehensive, but it's like it has a limit into how much it can show and how many tutorials you can see and how much it holds your hands. It expects a kind of level of experience for the game developer to actually like make use of it. Typically, like what can happen is that some dependencies which you're using with your game, I mentioned like plugins in Unity, may not work at all on the console. And depending on that, what that plugin does is it like something around audio, like environmental audio, or some special physics engine, or some different kinds of input support, or some other helpers, or something related to UI. It happens that it works on PC, works on mobile, doesn't work on console, and then the fun starts. Either you find a replacement, or you have to code some stuff yourself. You have to change it up a lot. So that's where the fun work begins, essentially. Sometimes even with shaders, with visual effects, like they work on Windows, they work on Linux, and they don't work on consoles. And then you have to like rethink your shader effects, and how to make them work, or if you can't make them work, how to make it similar, how to make it different way that looks similar at least, so that you are not caught doing something else on consoles than on PC visually. So things like that, essentially. So it's almost never easy to do a good port, essentially.
Yeah, no, actually, you answered my next question, which is what exactly might go wrong when porting things, but you pointed out nicely, for example, the shaders. They might work on desktops or even mobile, but not work on consoles. But it's interesting. I thought at least on Xbox, which runs a modified version of Windows, I think, they should work. Or
technically, yeah, but it's because of the specific hardware of the consoles. Yeah, it's like, okay, we can say that Xbox is a app special PC, but at the end of the day, it's special hardware. Yeah, it's all integrated. It has dedicated graphics drivers. The API, the graphics API is also a bit different than what goes on in Windows. So it's not a one-to-one, let's say, conversion. So yeah, that like if it were that way, then we wouldn't need any special code for porting to Xbox, basically, because it's the same with Windows. Yeah, should be at least. But yeah, that's not the case. Sadly, I can't go into a lot of detail into this like technical stuff because it's like under NDAs, top secret and stuff. So I can't share too much. But in a general broad view, I can tell you this.
Yeah. I also saw in a comment somewhere. The NDA is the biggest hurdle for Godot, But yeah, it's also biggest hurdle when trying to discuss with other people about porting, about what it takes, and the process is really complex. I once had a chat with someone that had a team porting on Switch, and they had to do a lot of. They actually went low level and told me like what exactly were the steps. Like some pieces of code didn't work on on particular devices, and they had to comment them and like write the code for a particular console. And it's
Exactly.
yeah, and usually like when your company gets a game, right? So
Yeah.
a game developer creates a Godot game that runs on the major desktop operating systems, and they want to port their game to, let's say, the Switch, right?
Yeah.
And they just want the porting service, no bug fixing, no. I mean, the game just works as is. What are the steps that you have to take in order to take that game and publish it and port it to Switch?
Okay. So first things first, we have to have some kind of technology to export it from PC build to console build. Like with Godot, we had to develop it ourselves for Mac, for Switch, and for Xbox, and we're still developing it for PlayStation. Very different platforms, so each of those are completely different basically on the inside. But yeah, let's say like if you're doing a Unity game or Unreal game, then you have this like done by the engine developers themselves. They provide you with it. If you can validate yourself that you have access to the platform, that you are a Nintendo Switch developer or Xbox developer, then you are provided with tools with Unity and Unreal Engine. Yeah, like GameMaker has I think it's paid access. But yeah, that's a side thing. Yeah, so let's say that we have the support of an engine that can run on a given console platform. Yeah, so that's like step one, the main prerequisite. Afterwards, we take a look at performance. We make a rough port, let's say, a quick rough port to see how it runs on the consoles. And then, yeah, we make notes. We try to pinpoint, let's say, bottlenecks where the performance is weak. What can we do to improve it? And sometimes it's a fix which could work on all platforms, basically like improving the speed of the game, enhancing the efficiency of code. But sometimes you have to make compromises. We have to like limit, let's say, graphics effects, yeah, so that it looks
Projectiles.
okay. Yeah, exactly. So that it looks okay, but yeah, but runs well, runs okay. Like because the worst you can have is like a console port which doesn't keep like even 30 FPS. Yeah, 60 FPS is great, but not all games require it. So sometimes it's enough to just target 30 FPS if you have to, let's say, challenge yourself to make a good working port. But aside from performance, we also need to tweak input output because all consoles have some limits into it, like limiting how often you need to write or read from the, let's say, inbuilt storage on the console. This is basically not an issue on PCs, but because of the console's nature, they don't want the users, the players, to have to replace the onboard hard drive too often. So they impose limits on developers, like how often in a second or in a minute can you actually query the storage. Yeah. So this kind of relates to how you, from a practical example, how do you solve your autosave? Like, can you autosave like every couple of seconds, or do you have to like wait for it? Do you have to keep doing it in specific points in game? This obviously depends on the game itself. If it's a dynamic 2D platformer or 3D platformer, or is it a turn-based strategy game? How often do you read in like new content? So do you prepare for new scenes to arrive so that you limit loading times? Obviously, nobody loves like long loading times when you change levels, etc. Yeah, so you have to mitigate that. So it's a bit more difficult on consoles to handle it because you have to keep in mind those limits. And if you cross some thresholds, it's possible that they won't let you publish. So you have to like fix until it's done. And as a third step, like from the big picture perspective, we have to, like, depending on the game, if it has like decent gamepad support, even on PC, great, much less work for us. But very often we have games which have only like keyboard and mouse support. Sometimes the developers don't even have a gamepad for PC, so that's our job to add gamepad controls into an existing game. Sometimes only released on PC, so that's sometimes difficult, but doable usually. Although depending on the game, depending on its UI, sometimes we have to do a whole conversion, let's say, of the game so that it's playable with a gamepad. And so that's the tough part. Often it's like we don't have too much work with performance, but we have a lot of work of redoing the game's interface so that it's okay with a gamepad. But also we have to bear in mind that each platform has its own UX or user experience expectations, so that you have specific button hints, specific flow of games, specific like events have to be supported, like when an achievement is unlocked, like what should happen, what should be saved, what should be like shown to the player, and you have to like keep in mind all of this with each platform because all of them have different guidelines and different expectations. And all of this kind of culminates into the review process, which you mentioned, and that's like one of the processes which we have to handle when trying to publish a console port, is that you have to like submit your build and it needs to be checked by their, let's say, support, and it can take like up to 20 days sometimes for a single run. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's longer, but when they discover enough fails or bugs, or like even stuff like naming of buttons, yeah, it must be strict, like corresponding to the official documentation. And it's in all languages that you are supporting. So English, German, Italian, French, Asian languages, like each of those languages has a guideline which kind of enforces how you can call a button. Yeah. So we have to be very strict about it because they can fail you just based on such a small detail, let's say. Yeah. So all of this is closed knowledge. So we have to have a lot of practice, and you have to kind of do a few of those games, like have this under your belt to actually know what you're doing and what to expect and what to like what needs to be done with each new project. Yeah, what to keep in mind. So that's what it takes to port a game in a very broad view, I guess.
Yeah, and that is like a lot of work.
Yes.
I mean, just the review process. If you wait 20 days, and probably that's working days, so that means in batches of 5 days, so
Yeah.
not with weekends included.
Yeah.
But on top of that, how much time, let's say for a regular game, not the one that like needs like the whole UI changed for consoles because it doesn't have gamepad support. Let's say that the developers had at least a part of gamepad support and at least a part of the console in mind when developing the game. How much would it take to port that game? Like in weeks, or how much time do you think it will take?
Yeah, it really depends on each game and how much work it is. But for us, like with Godot, with our, let's say, already developed technology for exporting, it's like making a build which runs. It's like a few minutes. So we're talking hours, which includes like testing the game. But also when we port a game, either as a service to someone else or when we want to publish it ourselves as the game's publisher, we do a full QA, quality assurance process anyway. So our testers have to play the full game, like try to break it, find any bugs. Like this is a funny process sometimes because oftentimes you find bugs which are also on PC. So so it's not just not just console related. So but we share it with with the games developers, so it benefits all basically all gamers. Yeah, to find something. Yeah, but we need to do a full playthrough. So depending on the game, it can take a day or two or weeks. Yeah, but let's say if it's a perfect scenario that the game works, it already has a good UI for gamepad and it has good like map input, then it can be like a week basically. Yeah, and we have already port. But with more complex games, with more work cut out for us, then it's usually months.
I thought about that. I mean, like usually you think like, oh, my game is gonna work directly on a console, and then you submit it, and it turns out nothing works.
Yeah, you have to expect the unexpected, as they
Yeah.
say.
So
Yeah,
the chances are of something not working as expected are quite high.
yeah,
And
exactly.
and this is probably I mean these issues or these challenges are probably found in any game engine. It's not just with Godot, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really any game engine, essentially. Yeah, like one of the more frustrating things, which are actually a compliment for Godot, is that with Godot, when you have a problem and it's a kind of deep problem, let's say low end, then we can actually like open up the engine and fix it there. Yeah. Sometimes, like when we find a more general fix for some stuff, then we share it with the with Godot engine, and it goes into the mainstream code. But with Unity and Unreal, because they are essentially closed engines, okay, it's like you don't have that luxury of fixing it yourself. Like I recall that I think if you have a if you pay for a sufficiently expensive license, then you can actually get the source code for Unity or whatever, and then you can like fix some stuff yourself. But that's basically AAA level territory, I guess, of development, and licenses for thousands of dollars. So yeah, so that's not for everybody. But if you're not at that level and you develop an indie game, let's say a smaller game, then you're at the whim of Unity or Unreal to fix stuff. Yeah, and then you can essentially expect when a fix will come, and either you work it around in your game, or you wait until a fix happens. And yeah, that can be frustrating at times.
Yeah, so this is one upside for Godot in this case. So this is not related even to porting, but just the fact that you encounter some engine bug with
Yeah,
Unreal. I think Unreal does offer the source code, though I don't know exactly how much you can
yeah,
change.
yeah.
Um,
For that it's open. Yeah. That's true. But yeah, but it's like yeah, like with Unreal, I think yeah, that's true. I told a lie there. Yeah, you can actually like do tinker with it a bit. Yeah.
but
But
they,
Unreal is a problem. Unreal, the problem is that it's a hog. It's very big. It's very bloated. You have to have a very high spec machine to build it in a rather quick fashion. So whenever you have to tinker with the engine, it's not that great because you have to spend a lot of time with rebuilding, relinking because it's such a huge, like with lots of dependencies, piece of software. Yeah. Godot is, very compact and tiny and light, so that's also one of its benefits when building. When we have to go that route, we have to go that low level route, let's say.
yeah. But yeah, it's a superpower of Godot. Yay, the source code
Exactly.
available. And speaking of source and code, especially, so probably for Godot games, you like it's out of question that the support for GD script is there. But do you also offer support for people that opt for C sharp?
Yeah, like we started working on Godot Mono ports for consoles, like starting with the Switch a year ago. And yeah, we had something working last year even, but in the end, when we started to test it, like with different games, like some demos or work in progress stuff, which we got a hold of the source code for them. Uh, Thanks to all the developers who wanted to help out, like you know who you are. Yeah, and So we had to spend some more time on that, and yeah, like we finished that work like early this year. Yeah, but it's working. Like we're not afraid of anybody who comes in and saying, "Hey, I have a good game, and it's like done in C sharp. Is it possible to port?" Yeah, it's possible.
Ooh.
And since we like finished our support, like Godot engine export support for Xbox, then yeah, we also looked into Godot Mono, and this also works for Xbox. So essentially, like we didn't start working on Godot Mono because like someone asked us to do it, because like C sharp support and the games done with C sharp support in Godot are like a niche within a niche still, I think. But we have high hopes that it will be like also part of Godot's future, and more people, especially from the Unity crowd, will join in and start using C sharp instead of GDScript. So in terms of console support, like they're not limited in relation to GDScript anymore, at least. Like if they want to partner up with us, or their publisher wants to partner up with us, there's different relationships out there in game dev, then they're covered. And like we're hoping that someday this will also relate to PlayStation 4 and 5 support for Godot Mono. At least we'll try. And yeah, so this is the reality. And one interesting thing I wanted to mention is that we started out this work so that we have a bit more tools to handle like performance stuff, because in some projects like GDScript can be a bottleneck. So we thought that yeah, like C sharp support would be great, even if not on a PC game but on the console ports. Especially that like in Godot Mono you can basically mix and match C sharp and GDScript, so it doesn't have to be a fully C sharp project. Yeah, so that's what we like started with, to have another tool in our tool belt to help our porting. But essentially, as time went on, more and more games have shown up, like where the developers are using just Godot Mono purely and C sharp. So yeah, so thanks to that work that we did, like we're ready for them, and we can do the console ports from those projects.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, because I think people switching from Unity, they'll most likely look at C sharp support,
Yeah.
especially. So this is really important. So I want to ask you. I mean, we already discussed about what does it take to port a game, but are there any limitations to porting?
Yeah, like typically, I mentioned this before, but the hardware is the biggest limitation, the platform itself, because like not just the hardware, I guess, also the software side, because the consoles typically run, custom versions of operating systems. So we can say that it's like a Switch or a PlayStation can be like Linux based or OpenBSD based or whatever, but the versions of the libraries, even if they're open source, like free, etc., used, they're specific. Typically, they're tied to SDKs, they're tied to whatever the software architects at Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft decided that it's okay for their purposes. So if you use something new, or if Godot engine uses something different than what those operating systems have, then you can imagine that you have to either do something on the platform itself, or you have to change something in Godot engine, and then you have to make it work, or glue it together, or add some sort of layer in between. So yeah, those are some of the limitations. Also, types of games, I guess, and this kind of touches upon the UI UX part of things, so that some games are so oriented around the mouse that it's hard to imagine a total rework of the UI so that it's okay with gamepad. Sometimes it costs too much, so that the project is dropped basically because of too high cost in relation to expected revenue from a console port. And at sometimes a limitation can be the platform itself in terms of the publishing side. So the stores themselves, which are directly controlled by Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, they are curated, and so you can't like publish any game. Usually, it's a process that you have to fill out a very long form with details of your game, like with gameplay videos, builds, even providing builds often, and then people reviewing your game can either decline it or accept it as to be published. Yeah, so that's also a potential limitation that you can't just throw any game at the platform and it will be published. Yeah, even if it works, even if it's a perfect port, if it's a perfect build technically. Yeah,
So it's kind of a walled garden for
exactly. Yeah,
probably
that's
all of
really.
these consoles. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically that's what happens now with Apple, yeah, with iOS, all those, court proceedings in order, like what Epic started, yeah, in order to somehow open up maybe the Apple ecosystem, yeah, that's interesting to see what will happen from that, and yeah, from those rulings, and what happens next, and how will the console markets react to that. But I think the console markets are fairly secure from the let's say from the comparisons with Apple's situation, because Apple's App Store is like tied to the mobile device, and a mobile device as a smartphone is a bit more like commonplace today, and it's not just for games and apps. But the console is typically just for games, so you're essentially buying a device, you're buying into the platform, and that's what you're expected to use.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. Okay, very interesting. So regarding the pricing of a port and what does it cost? Because there are many ways how you can sell your services.
Yeah.
Can you tell people? And yeah, actually, this overlaps a question. I said we'll take the questions in the end, but actually that was my question as well. So
Okay. Yeah, so I can tell you a bit about this, at least how we do stuff here at Pineappleworks. Essentially, regardless if it's a Unity, Unreal, or Godot engine game, our porting services start from 15,000 euros at this point, and that's like the minimum for the price. Yeah. This is, of course, when a developer or a publisher appears and they want to publish the game themselves, and they just want that they're just interested in having us prepare a build for them so that they can publish the game. Yeah. So that's basically the starting point, and then the price goes up depending on how much work we have. And how much work we can have is like depending on the stuff which we talked before. Like if you have to change the UI, how the performance works, what's the goals for the performance. Yeah, do we have to hit a 60 FPS performance? Because some games should have it, I guess, especially fast-paced ones. So yeah, so that's basically what brings us into the costs. But we also like to be flexible. So if a publisher slash developer wants to self-publish, but the cost of our services are too high, then we can arrange some sort of hybrid. Like they pay us a bit, but we also take part into revenue sharing. So we kind of get our money back from the sales of the game. We of course need to like believe in the game itself, in that it has some potential to get good enough sales, so that we get our money back, because it becomes kind of an investment. Yeah, and the third option is that developer comes in and like they expect like maybe $500, and that's it. Yeah,
easy
for
money.
everything. Yeah, for everything, including publishing. Yeah, so then if we like the game enough, we make a publishing offer to them, and then yeah, like basically we cover all the costs, do a lot more work, because then we become the game's publisher also, and not just the technical guys who prepare port. And yeah, and then we just share the revenue with the developer. We arrange a deal, porting and publishing deal, basically, and yeah, that's how a game can be published.
Okay, so you have
Yeah.
three types of pricing. So basically, the first one is an upfront cost that can grow with the technical issues that can arrive.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, you won't take any revenue share or any other money when the game is published, and let's say like it's a huge success, and then that was the deal, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a different story is when someone comes back and wants to update their game. Yeah. Then depending on the deal, then we either get paid a bit more, yeah, to do an update or some other arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. But with
But
the publishing, the other two options basically either a limited publishing where they pay money as well as publishing, or just publishing entirely, right?
yeah,
With that, you basically take the game and you handle it with every update on the console, right?
exactly. Yeah, because that it becomes our game essentially by an extension. Yeah. It goes under the Pineappleworks umbrella of games, let's say, and yeah, like it's our game, so we want to make it as best as possible. So it's not just doing a technical part, but it's also part of a business analysis. Basically, what a publisher does, trying to make as best a product, which is a game, in this sense as it can be, and sell it to as many people, as many gamers as possible. Yeah, so that's kind of a different discussion then at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, in order to benefit both us and the developers of the game, which come to us, yeah, who come to us with the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, like, when it's like a full publishing deal, can you tell me the percentage, or is that NDA
Uh,
secret?
yeah. Like it varies a lot between games. It really depends on on the game, on the situation, what steps did the developers do before like coming to us, and yeah, what's possible. It's like we don't have a standard rate. I know that GOPM, I think, in their publishing program have a standard rate, I think, like for all games, but no, we don't have that. We just treat each game on a case by case basis. But this is also because each game developer has different needs. Sometimes they come with a finished game, then stuff is simple. But oftentimes it's a game which is a work in progress. And then things become interesting because we can have a say in what the game will look like in the end. Like if we have some ideas or some feedback, like to improve the experience, to improve the game for players, to like make the finished product a bit better, um, by working together essentially on it. Sometimes also as developers, yeah. Sometimes also our development team like joins the game developer and to help fix stuff or develop stuff, improve stuff. Yeah. So that's why we can't have let's say standard rate of revenue share because of varying degrees of needs and expectations, projections, stuff like that for each game.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like when speaking like with these business terms, like people might get scared a little. But when you start like
Sorry.
when
Sorry.
you
Yeah.
start no, I'm saying when you start actually uh, when you want to be a game developer that earns money and makes a living out of game dev, you have to think about the market, the consoles you want to port onto, and other of these things that you usually, when you're making a hobby game, you
Yeah.
don't figure out. And I want to ask you, how many games have you published so far? Not ported, because ported is probably bigger, but published under your umbrella.
Yeah. Published, we have at this point we have 7 games published. All of them are console ports. Most of them are just for Nintendo Switch, but some are also for like Xbox and PS. Yeah, but this year we'll also bring our first games, which will be publishing not just for consoles, but also for PC. And I'm very excited about this because previously when we started out by porting, we essentially like got in touch with people who already had a published game on PC. So from a business standpoint, that's an easier part because you see how the game turned out on PC, if it got good sales, etc. The game is finished, the developers stop working on it essentially, or only plan some minor updates. Yeah, that's easier for us at this point. But yeah, but that was done. And since then, some more developers reached out to us with games which are still in progress. So we offered to be their publisher not just for consoles but also for PC, and they agreed. So that's what we'll be going for. One of the Godot titles which we'll be publishing on all platforms is Adventure, one of the upcoming games. But I can only say now that we have a lot more in store, which we'll be like announcing subsequently in the coming days, weeks. But yeah, there's lots more, not just Godot engine games, but also Unity games, Unreal games to be expected from us. But yeah, we haven't announced them yet.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And that's great to hear. That means a lot of game developers are working on games and publishing, and yeah, probably not all of them are on Godot, but a lot of them are still. So
Yeah, at least for us, yeah, because of our position as guys having our own console porting technology, we have some kind of edge up aside like from other publishers that we can do all this stuff in house. So that cuts costs, and yeah, so I think we have a value proposition for developers, yeah, to actually publish the game, to handle their marketing, to handle their business affairs, essentially, to increase sales of the game, to kind of hand in hand work together a successful release of a game.
yeah, okay. Yeah, very interesting, and thanks for answering my questions for this interview.
Okay.
It was really great to be able to have an interview with you. And now we'll move to the questions from the chat, and there are some from top to bottom. But yeah, for the people that are watching, start put your questions in the chat, and we will go through each one. Of course, not indefinitely because we also have need to have a limit. But yeah, let's head over to the top of the chat. So Niklas asks, the NDA is, in my opinion, the biggest hurdle for Godot on Switch, since you can't really talk about it outside of the Nintendo forums. But there is a help to get if you want to test yourself. Or is it the same for other consoles?
I think Niklas mentioned the homebrew scene. At least that's what I'm guessing. Maybe Niklas will correct me. But yeah, but there is a homebrew scene, I think, for all consoles, essentially. This typically means jailbroken consoles, like hacked consoles, where you can load up your own software, your own operating system for games. And yeah, I know. I think for Godot engine, I think there already exist at least 3 projects which make it possible to run a Switch game, Godot engine game on the Switch. So yeah, so that's one way of doing things, but this is basically unofficial stuff. You can't use it as a baseline to make an official port. Like if someone came in to let's say our offices and like said, yeah, like I already ported the game and it runs on Homebrew, then yeah, it's not something that we can say that okay, it's easier for us and then we can just take it and use it. No, it's basically because the official software, the official operating systems which run on the consoles are like have different code bases, different dependencies, different, let's say, libraries are used than any homebrew solution has. So yeah, so it's kind of different. So yeah, it's possible to run something on your retail console, but it's like unofficial. It's not the same basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Socius asks, but I think we answered this. When porting a game, if you accept making platform-specific changes, like different menu system, but you already said like you're gonna adjust if it's not compatible with the console, like with the
Yeah,
gamepad or things like this. So even if
yeah,
the developer doesn't request, basically you still have to make them.
yeah. I have to make it. Yeah, it has to conform the platform guidelines. Like if we're talking about some UI element which is like works the same on mobile and console, and if a developer has an idea so that the console version has to look different or has to have some different features which they didn't do or couldn't do for mobile for one reason or another, then yeah, like obviously, like if they have an idea, like we can talk about it, we can incorporate it. Yeah, I hope that
Nice.
answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Niklas asks which console is the easiest to port to.
Out of the two systems which we have, I think, yeah, like, okay, out of all of those systems, I guess Xbox, I think. I'd say Xbox. Because it's still tied the closest to Windows, to PCs, I guess, and it's also a bit higher spec than the Switch for sure. PlayStation is a bit finicky; they do things a bit different in their way. Uh, Switch is a very easy platform to get into, I'd say, but at the same time, it's the lowest end hardware wise. So it's the most difficult to tweak performance for. Yeah. So what we actually do when we have a job, either like in-house or for a client, where we have to port to multiple systems, we always start with the switch because that's the hardest port typically to do. And then when we have a good working switch base, then we move on to the other consoles and make it a bit better, beef it up, and we can still, because we have some higher threshold for the hardware, for the specs, then we can just, upgrade the build, let's say, instead of cutting things up. Yeah.
And yeah, like one related question to this would be like, do you actually fiddle with the objects and like 3D objects or textures or like to downgrade the game if the game is taking too much power
Yeah,
and it's not
we need
hitting.
to. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we get games which are very power hungry even on PCs because of how they were developed. Yeah, it's like think about a game which doesn't look like it's power hungry, but still it doesn't work that well on, I don't know, laptops, office laptops which don't have a GeForce or Radeon discrete GPU, but some, I don't know, Intel based mobile GPU. Yeah, and they don't work that well. So this is actually one of the tests I have. Like I don't need to run a game on a console. I just run it, with on my laptop with the integrated GPU and see how the performance works. And if it's slow, then yeah, I know that we'll have a lot of work ahead of us to make it run on Switch. So yeah, so essentially, yeah, we do have to sometimes have to modify the assets, the art assets or the sound assets of the game to make things run. Sometimes it's also part of compatibility. Yeah, like some formats are not like supported by platform, by a typical console platform, but sometimes it's a bug. Yeah, like think about like I don't know OGG files not working properly or stuff. So then we recode the sounds into different formats or whatever. Or there's a recommendation that you use a different, maybe some custom format from Nintendo or Sony. So we recode all of that to that custom format so that we get a bit of extra performance because maybe that format is also hardware accelerated and not just software. Yeah. So we use every trick in the book that we can use. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. One other question from non unknown. Are you related to the open source repo that allows Godot to export on Switch?
No, that's not us. I mentioned the Homebrew projects, but yeah, that's not us. We're not related to those.
Okay. Yeah, let's see what else. We already discussed about the rate and the so you said you gave God of War a look already, but
Yeah.
how do you say like if it's better or worse to port compared to Godot 3, or you haven't even tried to like port
Uh,
just to test it?
yeah. Like we didn't spend too much time with it. We just looked into it. Like we didn't look at porting God of War to consoles yet, primarily because too much stuff is going on in its development. Too much changes are still happening, and at the same time, nobody has asked us. Like nobody has a God of War commercial project going on and ask us when we'll be ready. Yeah, so we're just taking our time, focusing on what we have to do right now, and we're not focusing on the God of War just yet. I think we'll start looking into God of War when we have the first release candidate releases. I don't know when that will happen. Like we're still in alpha stage with God of War, but yeah, at that stage we'll have to look into it. And yeah, obviously, when God of War becomes stable, then more and more projects will pop up, and we'll try to be ready for that. Yeah, with porting.
Oh, nice. Okay. Next, Niklas said re homebrew. No, there are help for DevKit as well as the forums, but it's hidden behind the NDA.
Okay. Yeah, like I can comment on that, Leah. Like maybe something like this exists. Maybe someone helps out people. Maybe some work has started to it. But yeah, like we didn't need to bother because we developed our own technology. Yeah, so we didn't use any external help with this.
Okay. And X-Ray Dev asks, what about mobile ports, iOS and Android?
Yeah, we also work on those. Like we have like basically Pineappleworks was a mobile apps developer before we went into game dev. So we have the know-how, we have the let's say hardware, we have many smartphones still lying around. When we went into game dev full time, let's say 100%, and left the world of business mobile apps, we didn't go for mobile app publishing because it's a bit of different. It's a different landscape today than it was before. Mostly because free-to-play games versus like premium games. Yeah, but we're open to it. Like if someone comes in with a game which they want to release in mobile, then yeah, we're not saying no. It's possible for us to do it. Like we also do have a lot of work with Mac ports of PC games. Like a developer just has Windows and they don't want to buy a Mac. They don't want to like learn the different systems. So we do a port for that. Or the same with Linux. Sometimes a developer who uses Linux wants our help for a Windows port even. Or to check if everything works. Yeah, but mobile devices like Android, iOS, sure, we also do like ports with that. I think one of our games which we want to publish soon, we plan it as a console release, but also we're thinking about releasing it simultaneously on mobile as a free-to-play game because we think it fits. It fits both markets, so it will be exciting for us to see how it will turn out, if it will make sense to the players, and how if it will become popular and how much. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Um, X-Ray Dev also asks, which engine do you find the easiest to port from? So now it's the other way.
I'd say Unity, but
Oh,
mostly
oh.
because yeah, really. I'd say Unity, but mostly because it's pretty well established at this point. Unity like works very well, very strongly with the console platforms. Like at this stage, I think since PlayStation 4, since Xbox One, Unity was like working together with Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony to so that their technology works best. So they offer support even on the official forums of those platforms. So they have like dedicated people help with the technology. So they have like strong partnerships. I think Redus mentioned it a couple of times in his like Twitter posts about consoles, that it's a bit different world where Unity as a kind of first candidate for support and porting as an engine, and everything else like even Unreal has to be like some sort of middleware, less popular than Unity. So they have a good position for them. I'm talking about Unity here in terms of relationships. And because so many games are done with Unity, so many developers are using Unity, there's just much more help out there, even in those closed, let's say, closed communities of console developers. Because most of them use Unity and most of them have problems with Unity, let's say, the solutions to those come quicker. Yeah, you get more answers. You can talk to more people. You can possibly like hire more people like from the job market. Yeah, that already have some experience porting from Unity to a console. So because of this, I'd say it's easier. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's. But that makes sense. Like I mean, they're from a long time playing this game, and yeah, Godot has a lot to catch up. And with a small team, it's really hard to do it. But yeah, with companies around it, this might change.
Yeah.
Okay. Damek asks, is handheld tabletop mode support on Nintendo Switch mandatory or obligatory? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you why. Because Nintendo Switch Lite exists.
Oh.
Nintendo Switch Lite doesn't have a dock. You can't connect it to a TV. And the builds that you send to Nintendo like need to work on all of those support systems. So yeah, so that's why the handheld mode is actually obligatory, and supporting TV mode is essentially like can be an option or not. Yeah, some games have it, some games have some support for it, sometimes not. So some just work. They need to work essentially. They need to like open up. It needs to like be tested in TV mode. But yeah, but handheld mode for Switch is like the first priority. And I think that makes sense because most players just buy a Switch for the handheld mode and not for TV mode.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Yeah, I haven't thought about the Nintendo Switch Lite. Yeah, that one
Yeah.
existed. I also heard they are building now a Nintendo Switch Pro. Is that a thing?
Um, there's always rumors, either Pro or Nintendo Switch 2. Yeah. I heard something about it. I don't recall right now. If the like there's this like Nintendo Switch Pro rumors are circling around, very often. Like we got the OLED model recently. Yeah, that was supposed to be the Pro, but essentially it's the same thing but a different screen, with a higher spec
Ah,
screen. And it didn't even and people thought that the regular Switch would be phased out, but no. Nintendo still produces both models, so it's not phased out. Yeah, so it's basically more choice for the consumer. But I haven't heard about Switch Pro. But at the same time, maybe something new happens. Like it's not like I'm keeping tabs on all the news always. Sometimes some things skip my mind because of because of the work which I'm involved with, like talking directly to developers of games, etc. Sometimes some important news skips my mind. Yeah.
nice, nice. Thanks for answering. It seems that we don't have any more questions. Uh, where people can find you, like if they want to ask for your service, or
Yeah, like the go-to place is the Pineappleworks website. Just type in Pineappleworks in Google and you'll find it. The website is pineapple.works. We first wanted to call our company Pineapple, but then all the cool Pineapple domains, the web addresses were registered already, reserved. and new let's say domain names like started appearing, and Works was available. So we said, okay, let's just call it Pineappleworks. And yeah, that's how we changed our name a bit in the beginning, just to have a good, cool domain name. Yeah, basically. But I'm also active on the Godot engine Discord. You can tag me. You can easily find me because I'm just using my first name and last name as my Godot nickname. So I even have pineapples in my avatar, I guess. So I'm easy to find. I like to answer questions. I like to take part in discussions. Yeah. Sometimes I spend time with, checking if someone asked, about porting or Switch or Xbox on the Godot Engine Discord, and then I discover some, discussions from few days before, and then I join in and give some feedback from my side. Yeah. So please, if you want, tag me or send me a DM, and we can talk, or send me an email, or fill out our contact form on our website, and I'll be happy to respond as quick as I can.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. So you heard him. Yeah. If you have any games, even in development, because it seems you can strike a deal. In any case, if Pineappleworks likes your idea, then yeah, you might get a revenue share, and well, at least that won't get you like a big sum of money directly.
Yeah, like revenue share, funding, helping crowdfunding, we do a lot of stuff. Yeah, it really depends on the game and the needs.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's really great. I think it's good for people that want to expand. And yeah, one way is to I'm referring to people. You can just port your game. You can just put your game to Steam and then come with your game um, to Pineapple Works, and they'll just take it and port it to any other consoles. So yeah, it's from a small team point of view. This is also great because you actually save a lot of time by not wasting um, yourself time to port on all of these consoles. So if you are like one or two people or five people, it might be not worth it, like to get dev kits and try to fix all the stuff and go through the whole process when there are companies that specialize on this and just do it everything in one package. So
Yeah. Yeah, we can't do a poor job because then we would be out of our jobs. Yeah, nobody would come work with us. Yeah, so we need to we need to do a good job essentially. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
and it doesn't make much sense to to publish bad ports, because then the players will eat you for it. Yeah, like all the Cyberpunk 2077 controversy which happened. Yeah, with their ports of the game. Think about AAA
PlayStation
level
4.
now. Think about AAA level games now, but yeah, but this also happens with indie games sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. But very, very awesome. Okay, I'm gonna switch to the main camera and I'm gonna do the outro. I like you to wait a second so we can wrap up the stream first. So everyone, thank you for attending. This was an interview with Wojtek from Pineappleworks. I hope you found out some interesting things about porting your game to consoles. And if you want to get a quote or find out more for your particular project, you can go to their website. And I'll see you in the other events of Godot Jam. There are more coming up. Check the official webpage. I'm Adrian and see you soon. Bye.